Welcome to episode 21 of CRASHTON Talks. This week we have on Doug Ray, the frontman of the band Bad Ronald and his own solo project Toothpick. Shout out to Stephen Downs for setting this up. Thanks and enjoy. So how's things? Are you in New York?
Good. I'm in New York. I'm here in a bedroom at my folks' place, having fled the city due to COVID-19.
Yeah.
So my wife and I were up in Massachusetts, and now we're back here in Westchester, a little bit north of the city.
Right. Okay.
So I'm pardon my casual bedside manner here, but this is the only quiet spot I could find. I got a little baby going in the other room.
Oh, right, okay, man. I know how you feel. We've got a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh,
beautiful,
madness. So I take it were you in the city when it like all sort of kicked off?
Yeah. So my wife and I were living in Midtown Manhattan, right on 47th Street, actually, and we were there probably through the end of the first week of April. Then we relocated out of the city. My wife was about 9 months pregnant when we left the city, and the hospitals were crazy, and our experiences going in and out of the hospital were pretty intense. And we went upstate a little bit to get a little space from all the activity, and I think it was a good call. We haven't really been back to the city since.
Wow, that's nuts, man. Like we've obviously, like I'm in Scotland, but like we were aware of like all the stuff that was going on, man. It just looked scary. It was one of the first videos I'd actually seen.
Yeah.
It was in like I can't remember the medical term for the type of ward or unit that it was, but I just remember seeing like all these people on ventilators and stuff, man. It just looked terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when it all like
it's tough, and obviously it's
last couple of months.
It's still going on in full effect in the United States over here. So we're not following good advice or good practices, I think, as a nation, and so we'll be in this for a long time. But in the meantime, trying to make some lemonade out of these lemons, spend some time with the family, and do some writing and listening and reading and watching, and just trying to make the best of it. But it's rough.
So are you still working then? Well, this is going on.
Yeah, working full time. And then working on a lot of music, and just keeping our fingers crossed that things turn back to normal as soon as possible.
Yeah,
because it's getting rough. The work is tough. I know we're certainly feeling the effects of being cooped up inside for so long.
Yeah.
I think a little bit of Doug Ray goes a long way. I'm sure my wife would like to hang out with one other person besides me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll be good, and
that's like the perks of being a parent as well. You get to bug each other.
Yeah.
10 times more than usual.
For sure.
Yeah. So I was thinking like it'd be quite good to, because I wanted to talk to you about your solo stuff, but I thought it'd be quite good for like the people watching as well to kind of get a glimpse into kind of the stuff that you've done previously. If that's okay, we could go back and kind of talk about like Bad Ronald and stuff, and all the kind of MTV coverage and
absolutely
all that kind of stuff. So how did
anything you want to ask? We're
cool, man. So how did the band come about? Were you guys like playing together and?
Yeah, so one of the other guys in Bad Ronald, DJ White Owl, was someone who I grew up with and went to school with, and we knew each other our whole lives. We've been making music together forever, and then along the way we met Kaz and DJ Detox. We had two DJs. One of them was the MC. Very confusing. I'm still trying to figure it out. And it was once we met Kaz and DJ Detox, it was pretty quick that we started getting some pretty big shows and getting a lot of fans over here, especially in New York City. And we were discovered by a few different a few different labels who made some nice offers to us, and we got very lucky to have those opportunities, and we did the best of it that we could at the time. I'm guessing a lot of bands now are going through something that's a little bit like what we went through, and a lot of artists and people in general. So, we had our first album came out on September 11th, 2001. So what was supposed to be a day like us for many other people around the United States, where we had our plans, and then obviously they were uprooted. Of course,
Yeah.
the effect that it had on our careers and everything else was absolutely secondary to first just making sure folks we knew and folks we cared about and folks we didn't even know were safe, and thinking about the people who were lost. But then as we started to settle into what happened, we realized that, yeah, well, also our lives were just shut down, and our tour was canceled. We had TV appearances, and had a big radio and television rollout that was kind of pulled back as people just went into sort of mourning and patriotic mode, which was good. And
Yeah.
I think a lot about some of the younger folks now who maybe they got their first deal or their first big opportunity, and they were about to go on tour, and then COVID hit, and it's a real shame for. I know it's tough for the athletes and the students and all the college kids, but for me, it's easy to personally relate to some of the bands who are finally about to have their big break or have their dreams come true, only to find out that they're stuck inside, or that there's no way for them to get out there and meet folks. It's tough.
Yeah. 9/11 was sort of the last thing that I could think of that was like sort of devastating for the whole planet. Like everyone kind of felt it at the same time. It's the last like major thing that I can remember happening in my lifetime. It felt sort of similar to this. But this is obviously seems to, like, the actual impact of it, the centre of the emotion seems to have lasted a lot longer.
Yeah, and it's interesting because anytime we lose anybody to any of these tragedies, it's totally devastating. But we've lost just substantially more people to COVID-19 than we have on September 11th, or to terrorism in general. And I don't know if it's. I mean, I know why, but for whatever reason, it's taken a long time for some people, and some people still have not come around to taking it seriously.
Yeah.
Which is why it just lingers on. And you got to hope that eventually politics and everything else gets out of it, and people just get on the same page.
Yeah.
But it's tough.
How do you feel like you're like a qualified and practicing lawyer now?
Yes.
How do you feel sort of on reflection, looking back at your sort of music career? Like, do you have a sort of legal viewpoint on maybe what you done, when you were signing your contract, and things that you maybe would have done differently?
Well, I was lucky enough to be in the hands of some good folks. So I had good guidance, and I had people who were really just making opportunities for me. Now, there was definitely some shenanigans along the way, and had I had some of the knowledge that I have now and some of the things, I think some things might have ended up differently. But I was someone who was lucky enough to be in working with good people who were creating opportunities instead of roadblocks, and who were also making sure that we were set up to benefit from our work.
Okay.
I think there's a lot of the opposite of that out there.
Yeah.
But I was always a little bit of a myself. I don't think I came off as a mark ever. I was always a lot to deal with.
Right.
Might have seemed like someone who was about to become a lawyer at some point anyway.
Okay.
And so I was always sort of looking out for myself, but also it's easy to say now in hindsight. When I was a 20 and 21-year-old kid, I had no idea what was going on. I was just lucky enough to work with good folks.
Do you think that could be from like the side of the industry that you came from? Like, a lot of sort of rock musicians seem to have lasted quite well, like kept their sort of musical integrity, but also don't seem to have ran into any sort of situations where they're battling legally. When
Right.
Any sort of guys that I've spoken to that came from just sort of mainstream pop, that have maybe sang in like boy bands and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's always that path is tough. They're signing their life away from day one. They're signing away their rights, the music, the image, the likeness. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really good call. And I think it's a wise observation, is that something about the nature of those type of circumstances and the quick rise that often results
Hmm.
somehow also leads to people being very ready and willing to sign themselves and their rights away,
Yeah.
just in order to get on that fast track. So it's a balance. And look, some people I think have, you know,
Yeah.
actually I don't want to talk about anybody personally, but I know plenty of people who started out their music careers as, getting scammed and taken for everything they were worth, even though they were the artists and they were the ones who did the writing and the work. And then they stuck it out enough to come out on top. And some of
Yeah.
them, quite substantially successfully. So it can be a calculated decision that someone could make to say, hey, look, I'm going to take one, where right now, but I'm going to build my platform and my audience and then benefit from it later.
Yeah. I sort of wonder what the backlash is going to be from, like, being able to be a successful independent artist, because, like, the reason I've started this podcast is because I follow a lot of, like, the kind of American guys that are doing it, like one of which is Joe Rogan, and I've sort of been, like, following sort of things that are going on, maybe not behind the scenes, but the media reaction to Joe Rogan signing the sort of major deal with Spotify. And it's interesting because I'm noticing that a lot of figures that are maybe associated with him, there's a lot of articles that are coming out and sort of, like, revealing things about them that kind of destroy their careers and stuff. And I'm constantly wondering if that's, like, the backlash to this guy who's sort of self-made in a way. And it's got me thinking about the music industry. Is there going to be a guy who signs or has an equivalent type deal with a major sponsor? Do you know what I mean? And there'll be a similar sort of backlash, and it'll be harder for guys to kind of make their way in social media and stuff.
Well, it seems like there's like a natural tendency, like people make it on their own or people get a leg up. Anytime someone starts rising up, there's a backlash, right? And people want to say, oh, but what about this and what about that? And it seems just like a roller coaster of public sentiment wanting to break down people who got too big too fast, and then they have to apologize and start from scratch, and then the media and the general sentiment of trying to lift people back up. And I think probably a lot of it has to do with social media and the internet age, and like anything you've ever done ever now lasts forever. I think I probably benefit from having a substantial part of our success and our career, prior to full realization of the internet and it permeating every area of the industry and of our general lives, because we were able to be kids and be rock and roll and move on with our lives in a way that we might not be able to if we had had those same experiences now. And I think that's probably a good thing, because we have all grown up. I don't think we would all act and say and do all, in terms of myself and some of the people we were working with. I'm sure we're not proud of everything that ever came out of our mouths or anything like that. And it's nice to be able to grow and learn from that and say, okay, well, I did used to do this wrong, or I didn't used to speak in a way that I'd be proud of now, but at least I've had the opportunity to, come to go through the natural process of growing and evolving, as opposed to just getting canceled.
Exactly.
Which I think makes people just dig in and doesn't really lead to progress.
Like, one of the most, like, I don't know, like, famous stories is, like, the hero's journey, and, like, and for good reason. I think, like, you're always rooting for the guy who maybe isn't doing great when he's younger, and the whole process of the hero's journey is to come out in a completely different level of success, or go from a bad guy to a good guy. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so weird. Like, people can't recognize that, you're going to make mistakes at some point along your life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested and ready to meet the first person I can meet in my life who's never made any mistakes, or even inadvertently said or done something that's made someone else feel uncomfortable or unsafe or anything. And I think it's
Yeah,
probably worse to just pretend like, oh, I don't know who all these people are who are able to cancel everybody else. They must have been perfect the whole time, and that's nice.
yeah,
Congratulations for them, but yeah, you got to give people room to grow.
yeah, exactly, man. So you got to be in the sort of in the limelight in a time that would have been perfect for it, really. Like
Yeah,
the period of time that you had success in was like when I was listening to like American punk rock, like pop punk bands like Blink and Green Day and all that. Like
yeah.
at that time, I was like, if I could just get my band to play in front of like 200 or 300 people a night, like that would be my ideal scenario. So what was that like, man? Like what was the first tour that you guys experienced?
So our first tour that was like a real tour was actually a huge tour because it was the summer that our song came on the radio. We had a single, Let's Begin, that was doing really well. We were on MTV. We were getting tons of radio play. So we didn't go on like a traditional tour where like you open for one band for a long time. We were doing like radio festivals and summer tours and opening for just huge bands.
Yeah.
So we sort of went from like being our band in New York City playing for a few hundred people a night to just playing for just fields full of thousands of people pretty much overnight,
Wow.
without really having time to realize how fortunate we were to be able to get that kind of exposure and enjoy those type of experiences, which might have been a good thing because we weren't very nervous. We just went out and rocked it, and this is just what we do. We're just doing it in a larger place.
Yeah.
But we played hockey arenas and basketball stadiums and football stadiums, and just the way a lot of those summer shows were that year. Actually, we were able to open for some huge bands, and then just by being friends and meeting people and ending up meeting people that sort of music made sense together, we were able to get good openers and go on a lot of tours off of that, and obviously having help from the label and financing and all the type of things that come with getting like a major deal were crucial. But the most important thing was always just cool people and like cool bands or some cool band we meet and their manager. Like, well, I don't know if you remember the song back in 2001. There's a guy named Afro Man.
Yeah.
He had a song, I was gonna do all this stuff, but then I got high. So
Uh-huh.
we played a random show with them in Tempe, Arizona, some sort of a college show. I hadn't heard of him yet. They had just been about to come out, and we were really touring and doing more like rock and roll stuff. And we had heard his song on the radio. We never met him before. Joseph, terrific guy. And we came to open the show for them. We were like, who will even be here? This will be very weird. And there was just thousands and thousands of people just packing this place out, just kids out every doorway, all over the streets. It was just a mob scene.
Yeah.
And we were like, what in the world? And we all made friends, and our managers made friends. So we played a bunch of more shows with those guys, and that ended up being the story for a while. Just play shows, make friends, and keep being lucky.
Yeah. So like did the band sort of come to an end around like you were saying about the whole thing with 9/11? How
Well,
long after that did you guys
so
stay together?
it definitely jeopardized our opportunities substantially. We toured for another few months after that,
Hmm.
playing shows that we had already booked. Some great shows too, some weird shows. Um, some of the people we came across weren't what we were expecting. I remember one of the last shows that Bad Ronald played, we opened for Nickelback up in a hockey stadium in Portland, Maine.
Hmm.
And those guys were huge right then, sometime in the early to mid 2000s, in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And I mean, they shut down like the whole city of Portland, Maine when they showed up. There was just crowds as far as the eye could see, inside, outside. And we were like, these guys are these are like the hottest band in the country. They're going to be jerks. Like, they had their music video playing every 6 minutes on every station. The song was on the radio all day. And we remembered that all we knew of the band was the videos we had seen. The lead singer sort of had like a big black coat on and a big long hair and looked very ominous and sort of dark and scary. And we came into the stadium, and we were backstage sort of in like the tent area that they set up behind the stadium. We came inside, and their band was there, just the nicest, normalest folks you could ever meet in your life. They were like, "Hey, oh, come eat at this buffet," like, and just welcoming and friendly. And while I'm not always been a tremendous fan of their music, which I think is probably substantially successful and is really good, but I just thought those guys were about the nicest guys ever, and I listened to all their songs with a different mindset after that. And I'll tell you what, they rocked the show like no other, and those people went absolutely nuts, and they played their songs absolutely live, and it sounded perfect and better than the record. So those guys know what they're doing.
Yeah.
But I think that might have been the very last Bad Ronald show, opening for Nickelback in Portland, Maine.
Wow.
Probably sometime in 2002.
Probably been hard to swallow at the time, but good to end on a high as well.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That night was, pretty sure I'm still up. When was that?
Yeah.
Gonna get a nap in. Yeah, that was a long and hilarious night of shenanigans, but we had a good time. We miss Portland.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
So how long after did you decide that you were going to do some solo stuff?
Well, we were sort of, there was no real clear path, and we hadn't really had a lot of discussions in terms of doing another Bad Ronald record. We had a multi-record deal, I'm pretty sure, but you know, a lot of the music that was becoming popular at the time was changing, and I found that we were really limited by not having a live band, by just being a DJ and 4 MCs. People weren't really sure who we could play with, and I think it was tough to get good tours at that time. And I wanted to play in a live band, so it was really nothing against the Bad Ronald band. I think we might have been slowly, naturally coming to an end anyway. But I was offered a deal, a solo deal on a major label to make a record, and it was an opportunity that was difficult to pass up at the time. And it was a live record as Toothpick, where we toured as a live band, where I played guitar and we had bass and sometimes 2 guitars and sometimes keys, but always drums and bass and guitar. And usually we went out as a trio. And the touring just opened up, outstanding opportunities that weren't there previously because of playing essentially live music shows where bands were having us out, and we were really able to stay on the road for a really long time, for years, just getting great openers and headlining in cities where we were more popular. And I was able to also sometimes get gigs that were fantastic by being willing to just play solo acoustic, because the headliners like, look, they don't have to change, they don't need a drum riser, there's no equipment, it's just a guy showing up with a guitar. One of the first Toothpick tours was actually, I played solo opening for Ziggy Marley for about a month one summer across the South, and then back up the East Coast. And then pretty soon after that, I opened up for OAR, which is a very popular band, for a few months here in the United States. Those guys are probably the nicest and most wonderful guys you'll ever come across in the music business. Aside from being extraordinarily talented musicians and tremendous performers, but they're actually the best guys out there. And it just was a lot of fun to play the live music and stuff. Of course, once we had the live band, all I wanted to do was get a DJ and do some rapping, because the grass is always greener. And that's how I ended up, I think, doing this most recent record, which is more of a rap record, which is the live shows that we do for this record. Is some I play guitar on some songs, but it's mostly just me and a drummer and a DJ, and we just crush it, and it's rap, and everybody's invited.
So it's kind of like mashed together of all the things that you've done.
It is. That's a good way of putting it. I hadn't really thought about that, but it is essentially a little bit of a mashup of everything put together.
Yeah.
There's some catchy. I learned a lot. One of the bands that I was in for a long time with my very dear and missed friend Rich Cronin was Loose Cannons. Rich was the singer from LFO. I don't know if you remember that band.
I remember
They
the
were
name.
very popular in the United States. They sang the song "Summer Girls," and we had a band where we just did rap songs and just acted crazy. It was more like a Bad Ronald, but he was just great with crafting choruses and making catchy pop tunes and things like that. And I try to keep a lot of that going. He passed away a few years back, and I still obviously miss him a ton. But
Yeah,
that band was great. That band, we'd still be doing that band now if Rich was still here. So
yeah, yeah. It's hard, man. I'm really
yeah.
sorry to hear that as well. Around like the time that Toothpick started, did that align? Like, was part of the deal sort of doing um the film soundtrack and stuff, like the Super Size Me thing? Did that?
It was actually pretty much a coincidence. So Morgan was someone that I was friendly with in New York City. Morgan Spurlock was the gentleman who wrote and directed and starred in Super Size Me. And he was good friends with my producer, Sam Hollander, who is endlessly talented and deservedly successful.
Yeah,
He, I believe, had a relationship with Morgan Spurlock, which is probably how I encountered him. And we were recording the Toothpick record while he was working on that movie. And he came by the studio. You know, he liked what we were working on. He wanted a song. I don't mind saying we didn't spend an entirely long time on that song because I don't know that we definitely understood what he meant about his movie, and he was going to
yeah,
eat McDonald's for 3 months. We were like, dude, okay, like, what is that a movie? We didn't really get it. And if you listen to the song "Super Size Me," it is. I can tell that I clearly just got on the mic and freestyled a while, and then we just chopped it up and patched it together. Because it kind
it
of just
worked
sounds like
well.
me. Yeah, it works, right?
Yeah,
To me, it just sounds like me goofing off with my friends, making fun of people. That's a good example of a song that I think probably. Look, it was for a movie, so it's kind of like, the way I look at it a little bit is, if I were an actor and I were to play a murderer in a movie, I don't know how many times I'd have to apologize in real life for being a murderer.
yeah,
So this is a song that probably has a laugh and has some fun at the expense of overweight people who I could imagine could find some of it offensive. And I do feel badly for that. But it was, of course, written to be part of a movie that was
yeah.
specifically about that. But standing
It's
alone out of
funny,
context, I could see it being a little rough.
it's funny that like, and this has happened. Like, there's been backlash from like writers, like Pharrell Williams having backlash, and Robin Thicke, the track that they had.
Yeah.
There was a big backlash from like kind of modern feminists and stuff about how degrading some of the lyrics are. And it's weird that like no one like makes that sort of like correlation between like movies and lyrics as well. Like that sometimes as a writer, you're actually like taking the position of someone else. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like you, because
Absolutely. I don't understand what the
you're
difference is, because, like, and I'm glad you put it that way. That's a good way to think about it, because, for example, when I was growing up listening to gangster rap and listening to Slick Rick and listening to all these people, they're just really reflecting experiences. If they're saying it in the first person, that's a character, and perhaps it's their experience, but maybe they weren't necessarily the one who pulled the trigger. I'm guessing if every rapper who confessed to murder was actually a murderer, they'd all be locked up, because
yeah,
apparently they're all just out here killing people.
yeah.
But so
Doug Ray will be coming for them as well.
yeah, yeah. So my perspective on it, like, and look, we have some songs, especially Bad Ronald, where I listen back now, and like, for sure, that's not how we acted or behaved or treated people, but it's a shtick. It's a skit. The song is written for people to relax and enjoy themselves and hang out, and there's no disclaimer on it that says every word of this is true and we really did these ridiculous things. Nobody jumped out of a plane with their shirt on fire, or I know who knows what other kind of garbage we talked about.
Yeah,
But those were characters, and I think that sometimes people should be a little bit more hesitant to apologize, and rather than providing context and insight
yeah,
into what their opinion of art is. And then, of course, there's also going too far and offending people and doing things that are hurtful to people, which I think is a fair time to apologize.
yeah. It's weird because like maybe it has something again to do with the sort of side of the industry as well. Like, because I think like Offspring do it pretty well.
Yeah.
Like Pretty Fly for a white guy, to me, clearly isn't about the singer. It doesn't appear to be about the singer. It seems like he's playing a character, or he's writing from the perspective of someone that doesn't exist, or maybe that he's seen before.
Right. Like that guy in real life has no problem meeting girls.
Yeah.
And so the song wouldn't really make sense from his perspective, I suppose.
Yeah.
If he weren't playing a character.
But in today's society, like, he'd probably be cancelled.
Yes. You know, and yeah, you know, it's funny. That's a good example of a band where he is projecting a character. You know, he's got a self-deprecating sort of perspective that makes it easier for other people to relate to. You know, I'll send away, no, why don't you get a job? Like he's got this whole song about like his girlfriend who's mooching off him, but like he's working all day. Like that guy's not working all day.
Yeah.
Doesn't wake up and go to work while his girlfriend is home cooking. He sleeps till whenever he wants. He wrote a lot of hits. He's got millions of dollars, I'm sure, and he deserves it. But you know, no one's going to accuse him of being the character in those songs, I suppose. And I don't know, like, you know, there used to be a lot of backlash in the 90s against rap music. You know, there was moms against this or that or whoever it was because the kids were hearing all this music. And I was like, wait a minute, I heard all these songs and I didn't go out and get any guns and I didn't go do any of this stupid stuff. Maybe the parents should take responsibility for raising their children and giving them the perspective of music and movies as entertainment instead of being like, oh, I did everything right, but my kid played a video game and then went and shot somebody. That's definitely not the video game's fault.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
there are video games in every country, but it seems like only in the United States where people are getting shot all over the place.
And this is like a point that's probably been made a million times, but like, it's just like films depict violence all the time and depict a million different things that can happen in the real world, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're responsible for the actions of the particular people.
Yeah.
How do you feel from like the sort of lawyer in you of like how like due process seems to be completely like negated in most, like I don't understand how and can like a newspaper legally accuse someone of something?
So due process is generally a regard, and forgive me because I'm definitely not an expert on this, but I think it's really a relationship between the state, or the government, and an individual, as opposed to the relationship between private organizations and entities and an individual.
Yeah.
So, you know, you're not afforded the due process right. Like if the general public decides that, let's say you've been in a video and they're calling you a Karen because you went to the grocery store and cursed some people out, and someone puts that video on the internet, and then you get all kinds of backlash and the media comes out against you. There's really not, you haven't had your due process rights violated because the state or the government hasn't imposed any penalty on you. It's just society reacting to you, which it's free to do. I think we certainly would be entering a different territory if the government started censoring people or punishing people for their First Amendment rights and for their free speech. If you want to come out onto the streets of your city and say something racist and it gets caught on camera, well, I think you're an asshole. But that doesn't really matter what I think. But you know, when the public at large happens to see a video and then your employer sees it and says, hey, you know, we can't be associated with this type of behavior. Well, that's, I think, part of the cost of camera phones being everywhere and someone making a stupid decision to be racist or to do whatever the behavior was that got them canceled. So I think if you're going to be a jerk, then you should have to live with the consequences of it. But then it comes back to the balancing, like without any context, without any backstory. Sometimes, you know, you see a video or you hear a song or a recorded part of a conversation, and without context, it's very difficult to determine the meaning or the intent. Very often, I think it goes too far sometimes, and sometimes it probably doesn't go far enough.
Yeah, I would agree with that, man.
And
It's a really complicated thing, I think.
I think that part of it too, like, you know, white privilege is real, certainly in the United States, where I think people who are generally more oppressed and more used to having different or worse consequences for similar behaviors than I might receive as a white person. So white people who are not used to having to face consequences for actions or behavior then do something stupid in public and then they get fired or something else happens, they're like, wait a minute, usually I get away with everything. And I think a little bit of what happens is being treated equally to someone else feels like you're being discriminated against when you're used to being treated that you're getting the benefit of the doubt every time.
Yeah.
And I think there's some of that happening, and it causes some frustration. And then obviously there are examples where it goes too far and someone gets taken out of context or someone gets canceled for something that happened 15 years ago. I think a good example of that was the director of Guardians of the Galaxy. You know, I think his name's James Gunn. I don't know the guy, but it's apparently a pretty good guy that people enjoyed working with. Certainly a talented director. He had made some inappropriate remarks on Twitter, and then they said, okay, well, you can't direct this sequel anymore. And it has been something that he had said maybe 10, I don't know what he said. If it was wrong, I'm sure it was wrong, but I think he had apologized and taken responsibility for it. I think it's more useful to have someone like that welcomed back into society, someone who's able to say, yeah, I did this wrong, but I've grown and learned. But again, I think we said before, you cancel all those people, then who's left?
Yeah. I think that it'd be good if there was a way of mediating it the same way that there is, I suppose, like in a legal system, because like there's accusations obviously out there, people who have been accused of horrendous things, and could be true, might not be true as well. Like, how do you know, when there's an accusation like that, and due process is going to exist within the legal system, but not necessarily within the public eye.
And then there's always where private entities can go too far, and then they can face defamation suits or be sued for interfering with people's business relationships or whatever it is. Now it's much harder when you're already a public figure. There's a different standard for defamation, and there's a different standard for what type of a lawsuit you could bring to protect your name or your likeness or whatever it is, because you've placed yourself out there, and it's very different for a public person than a private citizen. But it's tricky, and I think that it's going to have to evolve, and there may have to be some standards for, what is the recourse for someone who's been, facing this social mob, but actually hadn't done anything, or was taken out of context or whatever, but then it's too late, the damage is done, whether they've lost their job or been humiliated or whatever it is. So I think we're going to have to figure it out as a society, how we want to hold each other accountable and what's proportional.
I think it might also have a lot to do with, like, especially this sort of like second wave of cancel culture. Like, I think it's probably just down to the fact that so many people are sitting at home with spare time.
Yeah, and there's nothing to do, and people don't have anywhere to channel their energy or their focus. And there's groupthink where people get caught up in like a wave of emotion, and hopefully the world goes back to normal soon. We can all be humans again and go out and interact with each other. I think probably maybe people will be nicer to each other when they're in close proximity again. Sometimes I think it's a little easier for us to be harsh to each other, through electronics or from a distance.
100%, man. So in terms of music, you took a break, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, I think I did.
What was your reason behind that?
Well, I was very motivated and very enthusiastic about the Loose Cannons project. And when that band ended because Rich passed away, I just didn't want to think about music or playing music or writing music. There was just a lot of sadness there, and it didn't feel fun or right to do it without him anymore, because we had been writing songs together for a few years, and just, I think slowly over time I became more comfortable just sort of doing a factory reset and starting over a little bit. and it doesn't fix anything, but it did feel good to be back out there playing music again. And I was surprised and grateful for the response that we received to the new record, and for also really grateful and surprised about how many people participated in the new record and contributed music and playing and recording and producing, and all the professionals who were involved to make a really great record. Was really great, and I thought it was a good collaboration, mainly between myself and the producer Alex Sheridan, who did a lot of the music and a lot of the writing with me on the music side, and he's very talented, and him sending over beats in the first place got me fired up to start working on the songs one at a time. And then we were like, look, we got all these songs, let's make a record.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, it was really good.
And is the record's out now, or are you still preparing to put it out?
No, it's out. It came out about a year ago. It's called The Night Shift, and you can listen to it. It's on Apple Music, it's on iTunes, it's on Amazon, it's on all the stuff. The artist name is Doug Ray, and the album name is The Night Shift. The songs are all really, really good.
Awesome, man.
I think I don't mind enjoying them, because it would be weird if it was just me, but a lot of people contributed, and we had a lot of talented musicians playing on it. A lot of the people from that I toured with for many years, as Toothpick, were involved, and like the drummer who we were playing with and doing live shows with is Blaze, who's now in a band called Ghost Towns that's doing incredibly well, making really, really great music. He was involved in the project, and Pete, the bass player from Toothpick, was involved in a lot of the writing and helping me organize the songs, and it was a good group effort.
Yeah.
And I wrote all the lyrics, except for the ones I stole. No, I didn't.
Well, you've got like a kind of rap influence, like, and it seems like even the kind of stuff that you sing is sort of like sung in a sort of really percussive way. Like, where does that influence come from?
Probably just from growing up listening to rap music and rapping, and even just from the first time I went to rap concerts, I was just like, man, this is like a different kind of energy, and the engagement and the charisma of the rappers, just being so in sync with the crowd, was just always so exciting to me. I mean, I can't even begin to. I've been to so many live rap shows and just loved almost every one of them. Some of them have been terrible. Some of them you have. I mean, I'm sure Busta Rhymes is a fantastic rapper, but I remember he came and did a concert one time, and there was some other guy who like did every line, and I was like,
yeah,
guy, rap one verse, please. He actually let me open up for him after that, so I have a feeling he's not going to end up being mad at me. I think he has bigger fish to fry, but I thought that was like not the coolest. And then like Jay-Z did a concert at our college like the next week and just rapped 1,000 verses for 1,000,000 hours, and it was totally incomparable. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm talking about. So I remember I went to a bunch of Redman concerts in like the late 90s and stuff. And he's just freestyling and rapping. I was like, man, the talent is just off the charts. Wu-Tang live, just insane. Biggie Smalls live, the best. Tribe Called Quest live is outstanding. Beastie Boys live, Cypress Hill live, just blow the roof off every time. So many. I mean, so many rap performances that just inspired me from day one, and I think that's just the way that I hear music now.
Yeah, I think like there's something in the groove of like hip hop and rap as well that like just moves people differently. I think from like just standards. Like I think there's a reason why like throughout like the 90s and noughties that like a lot of like producers took a lot of influence from the way that rap songs were written. There was like what was Stephen Still, like a long period of time where you would have like a singer like singing the chorus and then like a rapper during the verses and stuff. It just works really well, I think, as a format. Yeah. So like what about the sort of rock side of things? Like, so you have like the you've got the rap element to it, and you've got like the
Yeah,
band
you know,
element.
and I didn't think it was unusual, but I guess growing up, like throughout being a passionate rap fan, I also just loved, you know, I think what at the time was alternative or grunge or whatever you want to call it. But when I was, you know, 10, 11, 12, learning to play guitar, it was just all about Nirvana and Pearl Jam and all, just, you know, when Weezer came out with their first record with the Sweater Song and My Name is Jonas, and I was like, man, I'm just going to play guitar every day for the rest of my life.
Yeah,
I love that stuff so much. When I first heard Green Day, I nearly lost my mind. I thought that was like the coolest. Their first record was a total game changer for me.
yeah,
Just every song, just banger, one after the other, and they, I think, are pretty much been doing that ever since. But Green Day was a huge influence, and you know, all that era of rock and roll, I think, was very strong
yeah.
and definitely influenced me.
That's awesome, man. There was like a lot of bands around this sort of same time. You guys would have been starting, like Crazy Town and
Hmm.
obviously like Biscuit and Linkin Park and all that. Like seemed that there was like a huge market for it. And there's
Yeah,
there's a weird thing that seems to be happening now with like sort of mumble rap as well. Or like
right.
I find it weird that it's called mumble rap because it's almost like it's weird. It's like rappers are sort of taking influence from singers in a way.
Yeah,
It's
and I
weird.
think some of it has come out of the culture of like, I mean, honestly, like drinking cough syrup or whatever that is, lean, and a lot of it is also just like the laid backness of the style, and whether it's a part of, you know, weed smoking culture or drinking or just being like super chill about everything, like that it's not even worth your energy to enunciate the rest of your word. And some of it is pretty cool, I'm sure. I haven't gotten into it a lot myself.
Mhm.
Um, but I know better than to be the older guy looking down sometimes and being like, I don't get it, because I don't get it, but I know that the kids do. Yeah, some of it I don't even know if it's rap anymore. When they literally are just like, for better or for worse, mumbling like four lines over and over again,
Yeah,
and then just like yell something. I don't really ever hear anybody get to the rapping sometimes.
yeah,
Um, I mean, I've heard whole rap songs with no rapping nowadays, so I think some of
yeah.
it might have passed me by a little bit. And I know
That's
like
just like
KRS-One, for example, he was a rapper. Everything sounds perfect. Everything's money, but his message was so important. He was talking about violence from the police and inequalities in his community and things that he saw from his front steps from day one.
mhm.
Passionate pleas for people to open their eyes. And I don't like, for me, part of the importance of KRS-One's music and some of his contemporaries, Public Enemy, even NWA, was the message and the reaction to what was happening to them in their real lives. And I don't know how you get that across if no one can understand a word that you're saying, but they're able to convey sentiment and emotion and lifestyle in a way that people enjoy it. So they're doing their
Yeah,
thing.
and probably relevant to the people that are listening as well. Um, there's something I was going to ask you actually about your involvement with Super Size Me, and like, was that something that politically that you wanted to align yourself? I know you were saying like it took you a long time to sort of figure out, but once like you sort of understood what the documentary was about, is that something that you were comfortable being aligned with?
So I was already done with my part when the song was done. So it almost was, there
Yeah,
wasn't a lot left to consider. I thought the message of like, you know, eat healthy was pretty solid.
yeah,
I'm not usually like preachy to the extent that I think that I should tell somebody else how to live their life.
hmm,
Because I'm sure there are a lot of critiques people could make of me. Um, so I don't view myself in a way that's a credible arbiter of people's dietary choices. I eat lots of cookies and crap and garbage all the time. I don't necessarily eat any McDonald's, but I could see the value in pointing out through the extreme example that he created of why we don't need, you know, a 3-pound bag of French fries to come with your 2-pound burger. I don't know who that was helping. And they did make substantial changes, I think, at McDonald's, and he probably influenced the industry in a positive way. So I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah, it's nuts to think that there was a time where you could have just had like a supersized drink, supersized fries.
Like a gallon of Coca-Cola. Yeah, where are you going with that Coca-Cola? That's like enough for, like, you know, ever.
Yeah.
And it's free refills.
It's like the size of the drinks that you get in like cinemas for sharing. Yeah. It's crazy, man.
Right. You're not going to see much of the movie after you drink a soda that big, I'll tell you what. Yeah. Pretty good.
Nuts, man. So what are the plans, all going well, with COVID? Like musically, what are your...
Well, I've liked a lot of people have been sending me beats to make rap songs too, and I'm happy about that. And I've been doing a lot of writing, and I've got some stuff stored up. I had my batteries charged up for a while here, so I've been very grateful because it seems like a lot of the producers and beat makers have been having nothing but time on their hands to sit at their computers and make hits. So people have been sending me all types of music, and we've been doing a lot of writing. I think we'll probably have a new record together. I mean, we have enough songs for a few new records, but pick through them and find a series of songs that make sense together and convey the appropriate emotion of where we are in that time period. So I think while there's been a lot of negative from COVID, and goes without saying, the sickness and the death and the people losing their jobs and the food insecurity and all the other things are horrible, and I wouldn't wish COVID on anyone, and I wish it never came. But because we can't do anything about it or control it, I think it's also okay to find a silver lining and to try to find some good in all of this darkness. So people home, back to the drawing board, writing, getting in touch with their emotions and their feelings, and writing about it. I think there will be an artistic outpouring when all this is over and people are able to get back in the studios making music and television and movies and stories and books. And I think that'll be pretty cool. I've definitely had time to write and play guitar and sit with the piano and just listen to music and get through beats and poems and everything else to turn things into songs. And I think that there's probably been a lot of opportunity for other people to do that as well.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I can't wait to start playing live again.
Yeah.
Do you plan ever on coming over this way? The UK?
Yeah. I've never been to Scotland, but I'd sure like to make it. And when this is all over with and we can get back over to Europe, I'd love to come see you guys play and meet in person and say hello and let you guys make fun of my rap songs.
Not at all, man. I'll be on stage rapping with you. I'll be your every other line guy.
You know what? I talked a lot of shit. I probably need that though nowadays.
Awesome, man. Yeah. Well, if you're ever here, man, like we can set up a gig as well.
That'd be great. Maybe write some songs together.
The guys that put on like Tea in the Park. I don't know if you remember that festival. Yeah, sure. They now put on a thing called Transmit, but the promoters that put that on are sort of the biggest promotions company in Scotland. So they do all the big gigs and stuff like that. And yeah,
we'd love to come play. We're a 2-man show right now. Me and Blaze, we show up. Mm-hmm. No BS. We don't think we're cool. We just come to have fun.
Yeah, awesome, man. That's all you need.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this, man. And it's actually in really, really quick.
Yeah, listen, thank you for having me, and it was really interesting. I appreciate the opportunity to do things like this, and especially to do this in particular with you from overseas, and giving me the opportunity to look back on where things started and where they've gone with new perspective. You know, having been a few years since a lot of that went on. Yeah, it's helpful to talk about it and say it out loud and remember. It gets me fired up to get back out there. So yeah, I'm twice as fired up as I was this morning when I woke up, and I'm grateful to you for that. I appreciate it.
Oh, that's amazing, man. That's really Thank you, man, and hopefully I'll get to speak to you again. And if we could do it like this, or if you are ever over here, we could meet up in person and shoot an episode as well. Be cool.
That would be fantastic. I would appreciate it, and keep in touch. I'm always here.
Well do, man. Same.
All right. Have a good one. Take care.
Take it easy, man.